Chemical Health Risk Assessment Strategies (CHRA).
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. For today, I would like to present about Chemical Health Risk Assessment Strategies (CHRA). The first thing first is, what is CHRA? CHRA is actually Chemical Health Risk Assessment, which is conducted by the employer arising from the use, handling, storage, or transportation of chemicals hazardous to health in their workplace, as required by the Occupational Safety and Health Use and Standard of Exposure of Chemicals Hazardous to Health, Regulation 2000. What is the purpose? The purpose is to enable decisions to be made on appropriate control measures, induction and training of workers, the necessity of exposure monitoring program, and lastly, the necessity of medical surveillance program as may be required to protect the health of workers who may be exposed to chemical hazards to health at work. The objectives are to identify the hazards posed by each chemical hazardous to health used within the workplace, to evaluate the degree of exposure of workers to the chemical hazardous to health, either through inhalation, thermal, or ingestion, to evaluate the adequacy of existing control measures, and to recommend further appropriate control measures and prioritize actions to be taken to prevent or reduce risk. Assessment strategies. Assessment strategies. There are basically two approaches to conduct an assessment of risk to health arising from the use of chemicals hazardous to health, any one of which may be applied depending on the hazard class of the chemical use, situation, and the complexity of the work process. The first one is full assessment, and the second one is simple assessment. For full assessment, you have two approaches, which is a specific site CHRA and generic CHRA. The full assessment is conducted using method of chemical health assessment, while for simple assessment is conducted using method of simple risk assessment and control for chemicals SCU1402. Full assessment. For the full assessment, in principle, full assessment is conducted using a CHRA method. Full assessment should be conducted by a registered chemical risk assessor appointed by the employer for each and every workplace where chemicals hazardous to health are used. Full assessment should be the first approach considered. There are two types of assessment that can be conducted. The first one is site-specific CHRA, and the second one is generic CHRA. For the site-specific CHRA, it should be conducted for each and every workplace where chemical hazardous to health are used, while for generic CHRA, a full assessment conducted at representative locations, which may be applied to all other locations in which the work activities are similar with comparable levels of risk and similar control measures. Next, simple assessment. For the simple assessment is an alternative approach of chemical health risk assessment and may be conducted if the chemical hazardous to health is listed in the chemical register, not classified as carcinogenicity category 1, mutagenicity category 1, or respiratory sensitizations category 1, and can be conducted using a simple risk assessment and control for chemicals methodology SCU1402. Simple assessment involves a process of grouping workplace risk into control bands based on combination of hazard and exposure information. A simple assessment may be conducted instead of the full assessment if the chemicals hazardous to health used in a particular work unit meets the criteria. In order to conduct simple assessment, there are some required information. Required information to conduct a simple assessment are hazard classification and hazard statement, H code, physical form, boiling point or vapor pressure, operating temperature of chemicals where applicable, quantity used, and lastly, total duration of exposure to the chemicals. This is a flowchart of the approach of assessment of risk to health. Who can conduct? A person should have knowledge on how to interpret safety data sheets as SDS, work process, and task. Basic principle of hazard identification, risk assessment, and risk control (HAIRUL), and basic requirement of the Occupational Safety and Health Act. Next, usage and relevant guidelines. And this is the steps to conduct CHRA. The first one is gather information and then divide into work unit. We need to determine degree of hazard of chemical hazardous to health in each work unit, and we need to evaluate exposure from all possible routes of exposure. And then we have 3, which is inhalation, dermal injection, and then we need to determine level of risk. Next, assess adequacy of existing control measures. Next, conclude assessment, and last but not least, with the recommendation and assigned action priority FP. Safety is very important no matter where we are. That's all from me. Thank you.